Yo guys, what's going on? Robert Warshack here, and we're going to be taking a look at what I think are the best decks since the expansion release. These are the standout classes and or decks. Played a lot of Hearthstone yesterday. We played like 13 straight hours of Hearthstone. We played a lot of different decks, played a lot of different games. We hit Legend with Control Warrior, which we'll get into, but off the cusp, Outcast Demon Hunter looking outrageously powerful. It's basically has the lady plan with a bunch of cheap spells. So the lady does a ton of damage. But on top of this, we have this new legendary, the Dark Raven. This deck has a ton of ways to summon a bunch of 1/1s with Rush. So making this card to boost your board up. I mean, only 3 or 4 minions, and you have like well over 30 damage with this card. So the new legendary, actually really spicy. And then the Wretched is super fun. Every time you play an Outcast card, you get another Outcast card to your hand because it goes on the right. The card is already outcasted. So you can kind of do some really, really wacky stuff with this deck. With this Exiles, you also have a lot of burst damage with stuff like Dispose the Evidence, with Preds and the Vicious Slither Spears. So overall, this deck just has a lot of go. After, however, if your board gets cleared like 2 or 3 times and you're not set up to draw more cards, you can actually run out of steam in this deck, but it has the new weapon, which basically you draw a card, and when you play an Outcast card, you draw another card. So you can just like put this to like 5, 6, 7 draw. You dump your hand, you swing with the weapon, you refill your hand. If your opponent doesn't deal with the board, you win. If they deal with the board, you have a full hand to deal more stuff. So really, really fun deck. Kind of hard though. Outcast is not an easy mechanic, and I do not recommend this deck to anybody who is beginning playing Hearthstone. But if you're an intermediary or have been playing a long time, highly suggest. We have Rainbow Death Knight here. This deck, literally, I don't know how this deck wins. We played this yesterday. It only lost to Blood DK. Let me see if I have the stats for you guys. It literally beat every single other class besides Blood DK, and even the Blood DK games were very close. So if you look at the stats here that we had, every Death Knight right here, loss, loss, loss. These were all the greediest Blood Death Knights I've ever seen in my life. We're talking run Sire Denathrius. They used quadruple Corpse Explosion. They had triple Soul Stealer. I mean, we're talking unbelievable stuff. And this deck went toe-to-toe with all of them until fatigue in every game. So this deck beat everything besides that. Again, I don't know how it wins. We built this yesterday. We refined it quite a bit. And this deck just scoots. The new card, honestly, this card's horrible. But it is a card. It's new, and we played with it, and we had fun with it. But yeah, this deck, like I said, I don't know how this deck wins. It literally just does. So brand new Rainbow DK on the block. Have fun with it. It's really easy to play. Most of the cards are, pretty much all the cards are minions, and when you have a deck full with minions, it reduces the amount of choices you have to make per turn. I mean, there is some Discover in the deck, and there are some spells in the location, so it's not super smooth brain. But most decks that you'll find that have mostly minions in the deck and not a lot of spells are some of the easiest decks to play in the game. Moving to the deck we hit Legend with, we have the Rock and Roll Control Warrior. This deck, super fun, fantastic, did wonderful on ladder. I think we hit Legend with about a 65-70% win rate yesterday, day 1 with the Control Warrior build. The new Rock and Roll, give all minions in your deck attack and health equal to their cost. So being able to buff Ziliax with +5 health, +5 attack, being able to give Olgra +6 attack, +6 health. As you can see, there's a lot of minions in this deck that being juiced up like Hydra really helps them out. On top of that, we run the new Drum Kit, which is a great AoE card. It's not as good as like Rancor and stuff, but whatever, it's what we got. Besides that, looking for any other spicy combos here, we have Burden of Pride. There's a lot of aggro out there, a lot of people playing aggro. Being below 20 health, I'll let you make a bunch of 2/4s. This actually came in clutch, surprisingly. I know it looks kind of weird, but it was actually really sick. Forged in the Flame to use on the Drum Kit to pop it is quite nice as well. And then the Razorfin Rockstar works with your weapon really well, so you can tuck this behind your Burden of Pride, gain a bunch of armor that way. And then also Last Stand, just one of these, because we don't want to run out of taunt minions. We want to use Last Stand on turn 7 after we've maybe played Rock and Roll. And let's just say the minion you get from Last Stand, it's going to be like an 18-28 taunt that duplicates itself. We're talking like 70-70 in stats if you use Rock and Roll and Last Stand. If you really want to be crazy, put Lorimar in this deck, and you go blow Rock and Roll, Lorimar into Last Stand, and you'll have like a 70-70 minion. That would be kind of disgusting. Really greedy. I don't recommend doing it. This is the way I have it built. It's good. But yeah, if you want to be crazy, you can put Lorimar in here. Moving to the Overheal Priest. This deck also did super fantastic yesterday. Let me pull up the stats real quick. This deck went 6-2. The first 2 losses, I actually had a different deck and I changed it a little bit to make it even more aggressive in the last 5 wins in a row. This deck just scoots. I don't know what to tell you. You just play a bunch of stuff, you make it overheal, and then you just start generating minions out the wazoo with this guy, or you just do 1,000,000 damage with this guy, or you just win because you juiced up one of your 1/3s like Clergy, and you just keep hitting him with power chords or cathedrals, or he's getting buffed with Shadow Assistant, and then you go Clear Conscience. I mean, this deck just has 1,000,000 ways to win, 1,000,000 ways to draw, and it never dies because you just keep healing everything. So very aggro deck, but actually has a lot of gas to it if you play it right. This is one of the harder decks. I know it looks really easy. It's an aggro deck, but this is one of the harder aggro decks. So if you're a more aggressive deck fan, but want a little bit more difficulty in your life, maybe some intellectual hula hoops, if you will, this is a fantastic deck to give a go and to try out, and performed really well. As you can see, 5-0 in the last couple games. I think we hit 1,300 legend with that deck. Not super high, but still performed well. So those are the kind of new decks with brand new cards. The last deck that we're going to cover before we get into some older decks that are just good if you don't want to spend the dust is going to be Blood DK. Blood DK absolutely performing super well right now. It's probably because everybody's playing aggressive style decks because they're trying to take advantage of everybody playing new cards. For those of you who don't know, whenever there's a new expansion, a lot of players will just play the most aggressive deck or iterations of old decks to just beat the people trying to play the new cards, because the new decks aren't going to be refined while the old decks are. So you're just playing basically a refined old aggro deck, which is just going to absolutely obliterate any like a new control deck, new combo deck, even a new aggro decks. It takes a bit for these new cards to get refined. So Blood DK definitely does pretty well against, again, both aggro, being refined and unrefined. And it's just a really solid deck because of Patchwork and Mograine. So some new inclusions into this is the Ripper. This gives you a lifesteal dude. You change a lot of health in this deck, so being able to get a lifesteal little homie, and he is a corpse, and it's a 3/2 for 3. There's really no downside to this. Our Harmonic Metal, look what it does. It's just good. Most of the cards in this deck are minions, but giving them +2/+2 is good, or giving them +4 is good. So Metal's good. Photographer. So you have a good hand, you play this card, and how this card works is it puts a photograph in your deck. When you draw it, it costs 2 mana. You spend 2 mana, and you get every card in your hand that you had when you played this card. So if you have a Patchwork or a Mograine or a Soul Stealer or a Corpse Explosion's Blood, whatever's in your hand, you spend 2 mana when you draw the photograph, and you automatically get that whole hand back. So this is like super value. This is in here for the mirror matchup. Also, running Sir Finley helps you find the photograph faster. Deathstrike originally wasn't in my deck, but since we're playing this other new card, the Screaming Banshee, after your hero gains health, summon a soul with that much attack and health. So you're able to play this card, and then you do the lifesteal thing, and you just make dudes. Making dudes is good because everybody likes dudes. No Muncher, he makes more dudes. He's got lifesteal, good with the Screaming Banshee. And then, of course, Mograine, Patchwork, Soul Stealer. All this is the normal stuff. Not too many new cards in this deck, but the cards that this deck did get are really, really, really good. Moving to old decks. So if you don't have access to any of the new cards, Death Knight is probably going to be the best class to play right now, period, because it didn't lose anything in the rotation, because Death Knight is a new class. So it's the only class of all of them to literally be unaffected from the rotation. It just got better. All that's happened to Death Knight is it's gotten just more cards. It didn't lose anything. So Frost Death Knight, the deck that we saw prior to the expansion, is exactly the same. No cards have been changed. It's a very cheap deck. All these legendaries and shit are found in like the mini set, which you can get with like 2,000 gold. So like 2,000 gold, you pretty much get access to every Death Knight card, which is insane. So Death Knight, really, really good right now. Frost Death Knight literally hasn't changed, like I said, and it was one of the best decks before the expansion rotated. And now after the rotation, like we said, every other class lost stuff. Frost Death Knight lost nothing. So this is going to be just like a tier S deck right now. Any Death Knight deck that was tier 1 before the rotation, it just literally gets better. Same thing with Undead Priest. Undead Priest didn't change too much. It did lose a couple cards. Undead Priest is exactly the same as it was. Again, minus what it lost in the rotation, but not that many cards, to be honest. And the cards that it did get are just good in the deck, period. Like, they make this hero power cost 0. Cult Neophyte's an insane aggro card. So Shadow Priest, really good still. Again, if you don't have any of the new stuff or don't want to craft stuff yet because you don't know what's good, these old decks that were good before the rotation are still good now, especially, like I said, the Shadow Priest and the Frost Death Knight. So with that, those are the standout classes. These are the standout decks. And we also have, of course, the 2 decks that if you don't want to craft anything, those decks are good too. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, something I missed out on, or something that you're seeing is good, let me know. With that, I'm Robert Warshack, of course. Happy whatever the hell day it is.